I'm Katie, a 27-year-old woman, and I recently got married. You would think that this would be one of the happiest days of my life, but it wasn't exactly. My lovely family turned what should have been a beautiful celebration into a chaotic circus. So instead of enjoying the moment, I found myself avoiding drama at every turn. My parents insisted that I invite my sister, who slept with my ex, to my wedding. So I invited the one person they betrayed the most, and chaos ensued. They seemed determined to ruin my wedding, and to be honest, they nearly succeeded. However, I'm not one to take it lying down, so I decided to give them a taste of my own medicine. Now that they're acting like I'm the bad guy in this whole situation, I need some outside perspective, so let me tell you exactly what happened. First, I'm the youngest of 5 children, and my mom is the epitome of an almond mom. You know, the kind who's, we've never had a good relationship, and my oldest sister is a bit of a nightmare. She's always been the golden child while I was growing up, and she has a knack for making my life miserable. And then there's my dad, who is always on some new fad diet, and subtly or not so subtly judges everything you eat. If it doesn't involve stocks, investments, or the word profit, he's like, he can't be bothered. For instance, she would always find ways to make me look bad in front of other people, and somehow she would always turn the tables so I looked like the bad guy. It's safe to say that we don't have the best bond. The only member of the family with whom I truly get along is my grandmother. She is the sweetest, most grounded person, and, to be honest, the only person who has ever made me feel important. As for me, I spent the majority of my life sent to boarding school, so I never really bonded with anyone in my family. My aunt was the cool, fun adult in my life, and we spent a lot of time together. However, when I was around 13, she abruptly moved out, and I never really understood why. This happened just before I was sent off to boarding school, so whatever connection I had with her, and to be honest, with the rest of my family, just faded away. As a result, I was more or less forgotten, while my sister received all the attention. Growing up, the short version of boarding school is that it was all because of my sister. She detested the fact that mom and dad had chosen to have a second child because she wanted all the attention for herself, so she made it her life's work to make my life miserable. I became her favorite scapegoat for everything because my sister had a habit of breaking things around the house, such as dad's golf trophies or mom's favorite vase, and then she would always blame me for it. All and tell them some ludicrous tale about how I did it. At one point, she even persuaded them that I had stolen money from Dad's wallet, which was absurd because I had no idea where he kept it. Of course, they believed her, but when I was 12, things really went south when she spilled red juice all over my mom's favorite white couch and accused me of doing it because I was irresponsible. At another point, she destroyed Dad's important work documents and said she witnessed me doing it. Out of the last straw was when my sister broke a priceless family heirloom, a crystal bowl that had been in our family for generations. She swore repeatedly that I was playing around and knocked it over, and instead of listening to me, they decided I was too much trouble and sent me off to boarding school. Of course, they believed her every time the days ended, but my stories about her will never come to the point. They didn't really attend any of my school functions for the majority of my life. For example, I had a big recital where I played the piano, and it was a huge deal for me. I looked out into the audience, hoping to see them there, but instead, I saw a sea of strangers. Another instance was when I spent weeks working on a science fair project, and when I won first place, they weren't there to celebrate and didn't call much either. I was mostly alone, and eventually it stopped bothering me. When I returned to my hometown for college after finishing school, I thought maybe things would be different, because I was living with my sister again. However, living with her was like entering a war zone because she still managed to make everything about herself and turn every small issue into a fight. My sister was the popular person at college, and everyone knew her because she had lived in the area her entire life. So she was kind of the final straw was that she made it her mission to make my life a living hell because I was the new kid trying to keep a low profile, and she couldn't stand the idea of people comparing us. She began by making snide remarks whenever we were around her friends. Once, she casually mentioned in front of everyone that I was a late bloomer in academics, which wasn't even true. Another time, she threw a huge party and made sure I wasn't invited just to make me feel like an outsider. I told Mom about it in the hopes of receiving some support, or at least some understanding, but she dismissed it as if it were no big deal. So I decided to move away. I caught her with my boyfriend on prom night, and she didn't even try to hide it. It was as if she wanted me to see her showing him off in front of me. She was practically gloating about how she could take anything she wanted, including my boyfriend. After moving away, I finished college and university in my new city. I had to ask my family for help paying for my tuition, and fortunately, they agreed. I didn't find out until later that Grandma, not Mom and Dad, was paying for it, but at least someone cared enough to help. While I was establishing my new life, I met someone incredible, fell in love, and we got engaged. It was a wonderful experience. It was time to tell my family about the engagement, and for once I felt like I was genuinely loved. We decided to get married, and it was everything I had ever dreamed of, and more. After everything I had been through, I wanted them to know that I was doing well, and that I was happy. But their response was rather lackluster. They seemed hardly interested, and only gave a casual, "Oh, okay, fine." They didn't seem to have any serious problems with it, but The wedding planning started when my mom suggested that I return home and have the wedding there. Since I had established a life for myself in my current town and wanted to celebrate the occasion here, I wasn't too sure about that idea. So I chose to stay put and plan the wedding locally. However, when it came to the actual planning, my parents were largely absent and didn't offer much assistance or support. However, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were really helpful and stepped up to help with everything from finding the ideal location to organizing the details. I felt really included and supported by them, which made the entire process much more enjoyable. Now that it was time to send out the invitation, I spoke with Mom, and she pointed out that I had overlooked my sister's name on the invites before I could even start. I explained that it wasn't a big deal, because she had already told my sister about the wedding and that everyone would be there. I thought, hold on a second, that wasn't an error. I didn't include her intentionally. I don't want her at my wedding. But Mom dismissed me as though I was having a fit. She told me not to be silly and that it was a minor mistake. When I brought up the fact that my sister had slept with my ex and that's why I didn't want her there, she became enraged, claimed that I was being irrational and harboring resentment, but she insisted that I should not allow past grievances to influence family relationships, and that I should take advantage of this chance to mend our relationship. I was extremely shocked. I mean, repairing a relationship with someone who had betrayed me so severely felt like Mom was ignoring my feelings and putting family unity before my own welfare. I wouldn't have any of it. I told Mom that there had never been any true family unity, and that I had always been. I made it clear that I didn't want my sister to attend my wedding, and my mother responded by saying that no family members would attend if I didn't let her. That was the last straw, and I was so angry that I didn't even bother to argue further. I just ended the call and made the decision to stand by my decision to not have my sister at the wedding. I spent some time getting upset about everything before realizing that my family had never really cared about my feelings I decided to take a stand when they threatened to skip my wedding because I didn't want my sister there. I intended to invite someone else because my family had a big feud with my aunt. It was a bit of a rebellious move, but it felt right. If my family wanted to play games, I'd just invite someone who would shake things up and show them that I wasn't going to let them control my day. Let me tell you a little bit about my aunt. She was always Dad's least favorite, and there was a constant conflict between them, even though she was always very loving and kind to me and my sister. There was a major fallout, and she eventually moved away over the years. I pieced together that Dad had somehow set her up and caused problems between her and Grandma, as well as problems with her marriage, which I believe were mostly Mom's doing. I never got the whole story, but it was. With all of this in mind, I thought it might be time to get back in touch with my aunt. Perhaps it was time to invite someone into my life who truly cared and had also been wronged by my family. It felt like a way to balance the scales. Connecting with my aunt was a little difficult at first because she didn't return my calls. So I took matters into my own hands and went to see her in person. Fortunately, she didn't live too far away. But she was a little aloof when I first arrived at her house. But after I told her everything about how my mother, father, and sister had mistreated me, and how I had always felt abandoned, she invited me in. We sat down for tea, and she began to talk about what had happened between her and the Scoop aunt's family. Her aunt had a boyfriend that her grandmother disapproved of, and her parents took it upon themselves to make her believe lies. They told Aunt that Grandma had given her an ultimatum, either break up with the boyfriend or be disowned. Aunt was devastated and tried to reason with Grandma, but Grandma had already been informed that Aunt had chosen the boyfriend over her. The situation quickly escalated, and Grandma suffered a minor shock and had to be hospitalized. Dad told Aunt that Grandma didn't want to see her and would disown her which wasn't true at all. They believed that Aunt was planning to elope and didn't care about Grandma's feelings. Dad persisted in manipulating Aunt by saying that she had abandoned Grandma during her time of need, which made Aunt feel completely betrayed and rejected by Mom. Dad then went on to spread false information, accusing Aunt of being callous and selfish, and of not caring about the family's reputation. They even went so far as to say that Aunt had taken money from Grandma's account to pay for her boyfriend's expenses, which was a complete fabrication that I later discovered my parents had probably made up. Much of the drama was used to drive a wedge between her and Grandma, but by that time, she had lost the courage to confront Grandma again, after everything that had transpired. She never sought to mend the relationship, which only made things more confusing and hurtful. Mom and Dad had a knack for creating misunderstandings and stoking conflict. They fabricated stories and manipulated events to make others look bad. At one point, they even painted Grandma's health issues as the result of Aunt. As the antagonist in a family drama she never wanted to be a part of, I was able to persuade my aunt to attend my wedding. Later, I tried to make things right with Grandma, and it took some convincing, but she agreed. I also told her about how my sister had treated me, and how my family was demanding that I invite her as well. Although she wasn't thrilled about it, Aunt agreed to come. On the wedding day, things got off to a rough start when my sister and my mother, Em, arrived, and they immediately began making disparaging remarks. When my mom saw Aunt, she was giving my sister her whole attention. Her shocked and angry expression was priceless. She came up to me in a rage and demanded to know why I had invited Aunt. I told her that we needed to mend our family ties and that it was an opportunity to be a happy family once more. Mom was furious and wanted to cause a scene, but I had already told my sister-in-law about it, so she intervened and helped to ensure that the ceremony went off without a hitch. Despite the tension, we were able to have a beautiful ceremony, and as I walked down the aisle, I felt like I was making my own decisions and standing up for myself. After the wedding ceremony, it was time for the reception, but that's when things went completely wrong. My aunt had taken Grandma to a separate room to talk, and my parents were practically hammering on the door to see what was happening. Desperate to step in, my sister was making crude remarks about how awful the wedding was and how cheap the decorations were. My sister-in-law responded quickly and elegantly, saying that everyone had a great time and that the newlyweds should be the main focus instead of making small talk. I was tired and didn't want to deal with any of this drama, especially not my sister's constant negativity. So I told my parents to give Aunt and Grandma some space and let the newlyweds enjoy themselves. My husband and mother-in-law had had enough and had threatened to throw my parents out if they didn't stop making a scene. At this point, Dad lost it and insulted me in front of everyone, saying things like he never liked me and that I was always the problem child he called. They were talking privately, but instead of listening, they began screaming at me, accusing me of trying to ruin their supposedly happy family. The reception went on, and despite the chaos, we managed to salvage what was left of the night and enjoy ourselves. After the ceremony ended, I finally had a moment to check my phone, only to find it flooded with messages. I felt like I was going to cry, so my husband stepped up and called security, who came in and escorted my parents out of the venue. It was a difficult moment, but I was grateful for my husband's support from my family, and it dawned on me that I had completely forgotten about my sister. I thought she had left after my parents were kicked out, but she was actually still at the wedding. In addition, she had gone live on social media in tears, ranting about how unappreciative I was that I had thrown our parents out of my own wedding. It seemed like she was fabricating this whole story for her followers, claiming that I had been a nightmare my entire life and that I had always been envious of her, something I never. Her live stream was full of exaggerated drama, including claims that I had always been a problem, that I was difficult to love, and that she had tried so hard to be a good sister, but I had pushed her away. She also made it seem as though I was some selfish brat who mistreated her, always trying to one-up her or push her aside. She said that I ruined the family's reputation by inviting an aunt, and then had the audacity to disrespect my parents on the most important day of my life. She claimed that I was a rebellious, ungrateful mess who didn't understand what family meant, and she was the ideal daughter who carried the family. People were expressing sympathy for her in the comments, saying things like, How could your own sister do that? You deserve better. You're too good for her. I couldn't believe she was using my wedding to portray herself as the golden girl. Rather than enjoying my wedding, I was ensnared by my sister's drama. Grandma and Aunt had been together the entire time after their brief one-on-one at the wedding. When Grandma picked up the phone, she actually sounded kind of calm. I asked her how it went, and she said that she and Aunt had finally talked. Really talked. For the first time in years. Apparently, Aunt opened up about everything that happened all those years ago. I called Grandma in the hopes of regaining some sanity because I couldn't escape my family's chaos. Even on my special day, Aunt described how she attempted to tell Grandma the truth about how her parents had twisted the entire situation with her boyfriend. But by that time, they had already filled Grandma's mind with lies. For example, they claimed that Aunt didn't care what she thought and would leave the family no matter what. Aunt was devastated when Grandma gave her the ultimatum to disown her boyfriend or break up with him. Grandma was shocked to hear all of this because Aunt explained that after Grandma had that minor shock and ended up in the hospital, Dad wouldn't let her visit. He told her that Grandma didn't want to see her and had made up her mind to cut her off. Aunt believed him, of course, and didn't want to cause any more problems, so she just left in frustration. Dad made sure Grandma thought she didn't care, while Aunt believed that Grandma had disowned her complete mess. They began piecing things together right there. And Grandma even mentioned at my wedding that she had been hurt and perplexed over the years by how Aunt simply disappeared. She always questioned why Aunt never got in touch, especially after Grandma's health scares. After Grandma's surgery, Aunt once sent flowers to Grandma, but Mom told her they were from a family friend. There were also calls Aunt made that were never answered because Mom would handle them. And there was even a birthday. While I was dealing with my sister's meltdown and my parents' outbursts, at least Grandma and Aunt were able to make peace when Aunt sent a card, and Mom conveniently forgot to pass it on. Grandma apologized, saying she regretted not questioning things sooner. Anne admitted she had been too angry and scared to reach out. After everything, they cried, they hugged, and suddenly years of tension melted away. If there was one positive outcome from this wedding, it was that I chose to sue my sister for defamation because I'm so over this family. My aunt and grandmother are helping me, and she said she wants to sue my parents for mental harassment and manipulation. Now, my parents are accusing me of causing all of these issues for not complying with their demands and inviting my aunt, or Aita, to defend myself. I need your thoughts. Update 1. It's been a week since the wedding, and things have been interesting, to put it mildly. Reading your comments and thanking you for your support. Now, the people who are calling me stupid and saying that I deserve it because I put up with my family for so long, and that I shouldn't have invited them, are being realistic. Of course, I love my family, but at the time, I never thought they would go to this level. Anyway, here's the update. My mother-in-law is a little irritated by all the drama, which I completely understand. After all, who wants to deal with this nonsense after a wedding? But to be honest, she's been fantastic overall. Just a little annoyed by how everything transpired. On the plus side though, my husband and sister-in-law are completely supporting me and have been incredible throughout it all, which makes dealing with my family a little easier. Oh, and I've actually sued my sister for that video she posted. My lawyer says I have a strong case because she broadcast all those falsehoods about me. She has harmed my reputation, which could have major legal repercussions for her. We're talking about potential emotional distress damages and even reputational loss. It looks like she might have to pay a large fine or even be forced to publicly take back her statements. But that's not all. My aunt decided she wasn't going to let my parents off the hook. So she's suing them for mental harassment and manipulation. The lawyer believes she has a strong case. If things go our way, my parents may face some serious legal repercussions, such as compensatory damages for the emotional toll they've caused her, particularly with all the evidence of how they messed with her life, preventing her from seeing Grandma, spreading lies, and essentially gaslighting her for years. Since the lawsuits were filed, my parents have been in full panic mode. At first, they tried to make things right by calling and texting to apologize and say that we should drop the lawsuits for the family's benefit. But when that failed, they reacted angrily, accusing me of everything. They claimed that I was ruining the family, and that I was only being vindictive, and that all they wanted was to keep the family together. My dad even accused me of being ungrateful and spiteful, claiming that I was punishing them for attempting to act morally. In any case, I'm done with their guilt trips. Update 2. Finally, we had our day in court, and I couldn't have asked for anything. The judge didn't seem particularly impressed by my sister's act, and she attempted to play it off as if there had been a misunderstanding, but the video spoke for itself. To start with, she arrived in court with this whole poor me attitude, acting as though she was the victim of everything. It was almost hilarious. My lawyer presented all the evidence, including the social media posts in which she went live, crying and spreading lies about me, throwing out my parents, mistreating her, and being this terrible, selfish person. Although it wasn't much, it was enough to make a point. She was also ordered to publicly retract her statements and post an apology on all of her social media platforms, which is probably the best part, because we all know how much she hates me. In the end, the court decided in my favor, saying that her actions were malicious and purposeful, and I was given compensation for emotional distress. Cares about her online persona after witnessing her being forced to acknowledge that she was in the wrong. Chef's kiss. My parents' aunt's case was considerably more complex, but she did a fantastic job in court. She had old emails, texts, and even some letters that demonstrated how much her parents had manipulated her over the years. It was crazy. In one, Dad told Grandma that Aunt didn't care about her, and in another, Mom actually pretended to be Grandma and told Aunt to keep away. The lawyer went. During all of this, it was fairly obvious that my parents had been manipulating her for years. The court decided in favor of Aunt as well, finding my parents guilty of emotional and mental harassment and requiring them to pay her a sizable amount in compensatory damages, which, let's face it, is more money than they ever spent on me. Aunt also received a restraining order against them, which forbids them from contacting her or coming near her going forward. In all honesty, I believe she is more relieved than anything else. At one point, the father even yelled in the courtroom about how Aunt and I were ungrateful, how he essayed for the family, and how I'd been a problem child my entire life. The judge quickly shut him down, which was kind of satisfying to watch, honestly. She's finally free from their control, and it feels like a huge weight has been lifted off her shoulders. My parents tried to act like they were the victims the entire time, saying they only wanted to protect the family. Well, the roller coaster keeps going, but this time it's actually getting better. Here's the most recent news. Grandma has officially decided to remove Mom and Dad from her property and inheritance. Yes, you read that right. She's had enough of their manipulations, and she's naming everything to Aunt and me. My sister is officially shamed on social media. My aunt is at peace, and my parents have finally been held accountable for their nonsense. Grandma was firm that you both deserve this after everything she said. Of course, my parents aren't taking it well. They've been trying to cause trouble, but this time they're going through my mother-in-law. So yes, they've been calling and texting her in an attempt to paint me as guilty. She said it was the only way she could truly move forward and feel at peace. I suppose she realized they didn't deserve anything after seeing how much Mom and Dad messed with Aunt. I decided to follow in Aunt's footsteps and obtain a restraining order against my family because I don't want them to pull any more tricks, especially now that they're trying. The villain tried to get her on their side, but let me tell you that my mother-in-law is no fool. She quickly shut them down and even forwarded me their pitiful messages. It's honestly kind of embarrassing how desperate they've become. The restraining order, which prohibits my husband's family from harassing me or anyone else in my life, gives me peace of mind. However, aside from that, everything else is going really well. My husband and I are just attempting to settle into married life without all the needless chaos. I wish this drama had never occurred, but strangely, it feels better now, as if all the toxic energy has finally been released. In my childhood, my grandmother and aunt even moved in together, and they appear to be considerably happier now, which is quite pleasant to observe. After all, in life, they are both at peace. Feels quieter and easier. Perhaps this is how it should be.